Heard any of these in the workplace lately? You're so emotional. Oh, it's okay. You're a girl and girls aren't any good with numbers. Oh, you're okay to write the minutes again, aren't you? I mean, you're really good at it. Yes, of course. We're talking unconscious bias here. So what is unconscious bias really, I hear you ask? Great question, and thank you for asking. Unconscious bias is learned attitudes and stereotypes that exist in our subconscious mind that will involuntarily affect the way we think and act. There are over 200 forms of bias, and we all have them, every single one of us. Some, but not all, being gender, race, sexuality, mental health, and neurodiversity. There have been dozens of studies done on unconscious bias, including Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In, that highlight the obstacles women face with gender bias in the workplace. Please read Lean In if you haven't already. One of the most compelling studies that's talked about in the book is called the Heidi Howard study, where two professors wrote a case study about a real-life entrepreneur called Heidi Rosen. They described her as a successful venture capitalist, her outgoing personality, a huge personal and professional network. The professors had a group of students read Rosen's story with her real name as Heidi attached, and the other group, they changed the name to Howard. The students rated Heidi and Howard on their accomplishments and also on how appealing they seemed as colleagues. The outcome? Howard was more likable. Heidi, selfish and not at all the type of person you want to hire or work for. Really? Sheryl Sandberg's conclusion was that when men are successful, they're well liked. When a woman is, she's less liked. There's no question at all. Organizational culture needs to change. And whilst it might seem a bit unfair to place even more burden on those impacted by bias, injustice is magnified when you don't have the tools to impact bias yourself, for your team, and those around you. So what can you do if you suffer from subtle and not so subtle inequalities? Well, Kristen Pressner shares a simple way to identify biases, and it's a great way to start. Kristen recognized that the men in her organization were getting granted pay rises way more often than women. Now she, as the global head of HR, was part of the pay process. Surely she is a woman, a provider, a feminist. She could not be part of the problem, could she? Well, that's not what she found actually. Through her research and experience, it led her to develop a simple system for identifying bias as a result. She called it Flip It to Test It. I'm going to take you through this in a sec because bias can be really hard to put your finger on. It can be slippery, slimy, and sneaky. So anytime you think to yourself, you know, it doesn't feel right, is there bias here? Give it Flip It to Test It a go. Now here are some examples of, throwaway comments and questions that don't really mean anything that come up in the workplace. You know the ones. They're quite often accompanied by oh, it was just a joke. But when we flip these statements and add male instead of female or woman, notice the difference. Talking to young men is an absolute minefield these days. You can't compliment them, can't tell them to smile, you can't even ask them when they're planning on having kids. It's exhausting. Now, what are your thoughts on the unique challenges of being a leader and a man at the same time? You know what? I even question if man can do a great job as a leader if he's a father at the same time. Any of these seem a bit on the nose to you? All of these statements and questions were, of course, said to females in the workplace. But when I flipped it to man or male, notice how it makes these statements seem ridiculous. This is bias. Flip it to test it. It works, right? Challenging workplace biases require deliberate strategies from all of us. Things like learning to be heard, speaking up, getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, helping others that are coming behind you, and not laughing along. And you're right, some of these can be uncomfortable, but we're women, right? We're built to do tough stuff. So which deliberate strategy are you going to focus on to reduce the impacts of bias in your workplace? Please let us know in the comments below. I'd love to hear. Now, if you like the vibe that I brought to this conversation, you're going to love my next video, the 4 strategies for nailing your pay negotiations. Did you know that in Australia in 2021, a woman's average weekly total full-time earnings was over $300 less a week than men? So I'm going to tell you exactly where to focus. I'll see you there.